Okay.
So we're recording now, and what's going to happen is the raw video will be posted on a website called unrig.net.
Okay.
And then I will attempt to put together all of the various interviews that I've done and make like a 60 to 90-minute sort of narrative story about election integrity, um, using instances of election fraud. And so there's a huge audience now on election integrity
Yeah.
because there are some people who believe that in 2020 it was the first time that the United States ever experienced an election with fraud. And
Right. Isn't
so
that
what
fabulous?
I want them to understand, and the purpose of the video will be to say that there have been various communities that have always been subjected to questions of what I can say, elections without integrity. And so whatever you're feeling now, people have felt before, but maybe now we have a much broader consensus to get together and decide that we're finally going to have election integrity, real election integrity. So, with that, Matthew, and you being in the center of everything right there in Atlanta, Fulton County, Georgia, why don't you, and you're a journalist as well, so you can talk about your experience with mainstream corporate funded, foundation funded journalism too. And then just tell me what your ideas are about an election with integrity. What does it look like, and how do we know when we've got it?
Okay. All right. Are we on?
We're on.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So, Cynthia, you and I actually met for the first time in connection with elections integrity issues after the 2004 election. And when I talk about, lately with everything that's been going on, and I talk to people, I say, do you remember John Kerry? Oh yeah, I remember John Kerry. Okay, do you I know this is a long time ago, and there are some people who are too young to remember John Kerry. That's the scary part. But there were a great many of us who questioned the results of the 2004 election. And in Georgia, they had just recently adopted the Diebold machines, which were the first electronic voting machines. And and at that time I was kind of like a nationally directed journalist, and I was writing for some of the internet, kind of independent internet publications around that time that were coming up, and BuzzFlash, Raw Story, Common Dreams, Truth Out, and some of those are still around. And that's when I actually interviewed you for the first time, because you and then Congresswoman Corin Brown
Mhm.
had somebody. I think the guy's name was Harry Hursty, and it was a guy,
That's
and
right.
they
Oh,
they
yeah,
did
you're
they
good.
did a demonstration of a hacking of an e-voting machine.
That's right.
And right now, this was so long ago that I can't tell you exactly what the issues were with the Kerry election. I know there was like questions about Ohio, and of course Kerry wasn't gonna do anything about it. He was just gonna concede, just like Gore. And
Yes.
the funny thing is that for a long time, I really thought that Democrats were just kind of a bunch of wimps on election integrity, and that they didn't want to question anything because they didn't want to be seen as sore losers, and they didn't want to undermine people's confidence in the system itself. So it was always this great hesitance to want to question the results of an election. So it was actually, you and I think some other people. I don't
Bev
remember.
Harris from Black Box Voting.
Right. But in Congress, I
Oh,
feel like, and it may have been Barbara Boxer who
Barbara
said,
Boxer, that's right.
there's no hope of overturning this, but I object.
Yeah,
It was like, I think we got maybe one person in the Senate and maybe you and some other people in the House to say, no, for the record, there's issues here. And even that at that time was like a big deal to even get to that point. But I know that there were issues in Ohio. I know that there were questions. There was that guy Bob Petrakis up there, and they were
that's
looking at
right.
stuff, and so you know uh, we just kind of felt like there was no interest, you know, I mean, popularly, it seemed like there was very little interest in questioning this election, and that, not only did Bush get a number of 4 more years, I remember people saying, "Oh, I'm going to move to Canada if Bush gets another 4 years," and none of us moved to
Yes.
Canada. But so that was that, and then it was like it took maybe 10, 15 years and I think the Stacey Abrams movement, you know, um, where she started raising issues with the elections and her race against the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp. It kind of became popular again for people on the left to be interested in elections integrity, fairness, access, all that stuff. And so she has her organizations, and Fair Fight, and all that. And she's really been given a lot of credit, I think, for mobilizing people in Georgia. But it's kind of been a big like evolution of the left, to where it was kind of like taboo to question the elections, in the Democratic establishment. Whereas now it seemed like up until last year, it was popular again. Now we're at a point where, and I feel like there's hypocrisy on both sides. I
Mm.
feel like there's hypocrisy on both sides, because it was like, where was the right wing in 2004?
Or 2000 for
None
that
of,
matter, or 2000 when it was
right, right,
Bush and Gore, you know,
right,
and so I agree with you that that there was silence. There was silence then when some people were really hurting.
right. And your concern with elections integrity shouldn't be based on the outcome of the election and whether it's your candidate or your party who won. You should be concerned even if your party won. And so I'm just seeing like, okay, well, on the right, there's this newfound concern with elections integrity, and it's like, welcome, thank you. But understand that there's a lot of us who've been dealing with this, and my publication, Atlanta Progressive News, was really in the wilderness for maybe 10 years talking about the Diebold voting machines. And finally, we got the voter verified paper audit trail in Georgia. So that's now and we switched from Diebold to the new company, to that new company. And they
Yeah,
did
Dominion. The only
Dominion.
problem is basically it might not be the same people, but it's the same methodology and the same processes, unfortunately. In
Right.
fact, Diebold was sold and acquired by, at least according to my lawyer, Mike Raffoff, you might remember him,
Okay.
that it was acquired by the Dominion outfit.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so we finally got this paper audit trail, and I've voted in Georgia with it, so I can tell you, you vote, and then you get this printout, and then you can look at the printout and confirm your votes, and then you feed it into a machine which now scans it, but then it also goes into a secure box. And so The idea is that in the case of a recount or an audit, that would be available. Now, there was some concern that our recount procedures in state statute essentially didn't really rely at all on the paper trail that we had created, and that they were still just going to scan the barcodes again, which would almost certainly lead to the same result as before.
Yeah.
And so it was almost unheard of to have a recount with a new result when it was based on the machines. And so there was a lot of concern that despite getting the paper audit trail, that we hadn't really made any progress in effect. But my understanding is that I think we did 3 recounts during the Trump um, Biden election in Georgia. There was a lot of attention on Georgia and pressure. I think, Kemp was getting phone calls from Trump, and, Raffensperger was getting a lot of pressure. So they did 3 recounts. And I think in one of the recounts, they actually did manually review by a human the paper audit trail. Now, you might want to talk to Garland Favorito if you
I
haven't.
already have. And in
So,
fact, he maintains that the process that is used by Georgia continues to be unverifiable and unrecountable.
right. And he's the expert on why,
Yeah.
despite what I just told you, it's still
Right.
not good enough. And so I don't know all the details. It's a lot. It's a lot. But I know that we did finally get that paper audit trail. That was something that we thought was a big part of the solution. I think we can get it right. I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility to get it right. I don't know, I don't know whether the powers that be want to get it right. I mean, people noted that after 2001 in Georgia, we went from being a Republican state to a Democrat. We went from being a Democratic state to a Republican state in terms of the governor and all the statewide positions, and you know, and some people believed that it was because of Diebold that happened. It was kind of uncanny the way it happened.
Yeah.
And so now, like it was 10 years of people saying we want to go back to paper ballots, we want to have the paper audit trail, and we finally had it. We spent the money. I know there's still some issues, and take it away, Garland, to tell us what those are.
Yeah.
But I also lived in Washington and Oregon in like 2013, 14, 15, 16. And while I was going to law school. And, those states have this automatic paper ballot, like everyone gets an absentee ballot. And then there are no voting machines. You don't go and vote. Everybody is expected to mail or drop off their paper ballot. And so for states that have been doing that, like I don't see the problem with it. I don't really see what the issues are, with the absentee voting, for all, because it seems like everyone's going to get the ballot, and you have plenty of options. They would have drop boxes right downtown. They would have drop boxes at the malls. It was never inconvenient to drop off your ballot. And then, you've got this paper ballot. They may be scanning it ultimately in the, anyway, but, I don't know what the problem is. Like people on the right seem to really be up in arms and trying to limit now absentee voting. And, they're coming at it from, the fraud theory, which, no one's going to say that that's an illegitimate issue. But I think that, you have to attest under penalty of perjury that it's you, when you sign your ballot. And I think it's, I think it would really be a lot for someone to perpetrate a fraud like that.
Well, I actually spoke with an attorney friend of mine who lives in Oregon, and she said for at least the last 2 decades, they have done mail-in paper ballots,
Right.
and there is no problem, but they do a signature check
Okay.
so that the signature is verified, as they are counting, and they do not count before election day, 7 o'clock or whenever the polls close. That's when the count begins. So, and she was very pleased with that as a process.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And that's
And
the
she's a civil rights attorney.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
she would be very highly attuned to sort of violations of the Voting Rights Act or civil rights in general
Yeah,
and
yeah.
voting rights.
So that was consistent with my experience living in Oregon.
Yes, that's
And,
right.
you know, and so I think there's, some states that went from having very little absentee voting, which was, it used to be a Republican thing. It was like kind of like, the middle class housewife, would be the one, voting absentee. But now, they expanded it so much. So there might be growing pains for those states that are moving toward that. But now, I mean, they're fighting it. They don't want. Oh, now you need an excuse. That's the latest Georgia proposal. You need an excuse to absentee vote. You need like a doctor's note or something, and then they want a photocopy of your ID. I mean, it's just a lot. It's just a lot. And I feel like, you know, something like that could make it harder for people to vote, could actually dampen the franchise. And so we want fairness, we want integrity, we want results that we can trust, as well. We want to know that things are being counted properly. But can we do that without essentially disenfranchising people?
Well, the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts holds, they vote paper ballot only, and then the community does the counting. And the community shows up on election night and watches as the count is done. So,
Oh my.
maybe you could enhance the idea of civics and citizenship and participation
Wow.
in this experiment that we have in the United States and freedom by actually becoming a part of the whole endeavor, and
Yeah.
and becoming a part of it physically, not by certain groups buying money, buying access. And we haven't spoken, you didn't mention anything about campaign finance. You've run a campaign, and we're basically out of time too, but
Okay.
you've run a campaign. Could you just add a few thoughts about campaign finance?
Yeah, I mean, I think the states that are doing, publicly funded municipal elections and the public financing is absolutely what we have to move toward. I did run for Atlanta City Council. I am currently a candidate for Atlanta City Council. I can't stand asking for money. It is just like, it is. It just disgusts me. And then you have to follow up. Well, remember, you said you were going to give me money, that's like,
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I've watched as, some of the states have done these democracy dollars thing, which is
Mm-hmm.
cool. Portland, I think, just started it, where everybody gets this democracy voucher. And, it's like a $50 voucher that you can authorize to go to the candidate of your choice, but the $50 comes out of the fund, not your
Yes.
account.
Oh, now see, that's what I'm thinking about in terms of, sort of balancing that out as well, because we are at a stage now where 10 very wealthy people could get into one room and they could basically buy the United States Senate.
Yeah.
That's the way it is now.
I mean, I kind of felt like, I really shouldn't run for Atlanta City Council without $1 million, you know?
Yes.
And it's sad. So I mean, somebody defeated me who came in with much, 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 much more money than me, and he had no experience, and he's since been indicted by the federal government, and just
Wow.
so this is just what happens. And but another thing about me running before is that there was a challenge of the election brought by another one of the candidates, and I actually participated in that challenge. You mentioned the counting of the ballots in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Um, so when the Trump stuff was going on, one of the complaints I heard about in the news was like, they're not letting him watch the recount, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's not new. That's like, we've had that complaint, all this time. And it's true. Like they were saying, Greg Clay was the other candidate in that race who had asked for a recount. And, Fulton County, who, by the way, I mean, they're getting rid of Richard Barron, the elections director, finally. But they basically, the table's on the other side of the room, and you're allowed to be, I don't know if it's roped off or whatever, but you're allowed to be all the way on the other side of the room, and you can, see them. I mean, you see that they have pieces of paper. I mean, that's about its best, so it's not a real meaningful recount. And
Yeah.
I actually like got the judge to let me look at one of the ballots, and like people were shocked. People were like, this is unacceptable. And, like, I'm like, well, wait a second, we have questions about it. It was provisional ballots and
Right.
whatever. So, um, I I do think that there's probably a way that we could increase confidence in manual recounts without violating people's privacy. You
Yes.
know,
Yes.
because there's a way. I mean, you could redact it, or I mean, it would already be pretty hard to put together who voted for who, and based on the way it already is. But I think that we could probably have a little bit more transparency, at least without violating privacy.
Okay, I am flat out of time. I'm so sorry.
I
Um,
hope I was helpful.
yes, you absolutely have been.
Okay.
And I just appreciate so much getting back in touch with you, Matthew, and I'm going to stay in touch this time.
Please do. We might have to schedule an appointment just to finish catching up.
That's right. Okay, I will talk to you later.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you.